The greatest of all time guest is back. Do you think that the modern Hindu understands Sanatan Dharma?
No, but that's also because of certain historical realities that we had to pass through, colonization and things like that, etc. It changes the mindset.
What's the end goal of Sanatan Dharma?
To divinize yourself. The one question that people have struggled with is that why am I suffering? If you are born, you will suffer. Lord Rama also had periods of suffering. So how do you end suffering? You end suffering by...
So there's some point in your own spiritual journey where you will have the ticket to escape the cycle of birth and death.
What I personally feel, the aim is not even escaping from life and birth. You become a reflection of the deity.
How does one explain ritualistic practice to the average person?
Sanatan Dharma had never been a religion that preaches. If you don't follow the rules, it's not that somebody is going to come and beat you up. But what happens is that the energy that you are going to generate may take a bit more time to produce the correct result.
What is Samadhi?
Samadhi is single-pointed absorption into a deity or a thought or a spiritual idea or a mantra. It can only come when the Kundalini is awake.
They say that you can go crazy when it comes to the awakening of a Kundalini.
Yes.
If I had to introduce the concept of Sanatan Dharma, or Hinduism as the world calls it, to someone who's never heard of the word Hinduism or the faith known as Sanatan Dharma, then I'd introduce them to Rajarshi Nandy. I think he is the only guest that we've had through the course of our 6 years of podcasting who's given us about 25 to 30 episodes. That's the kind of depth of knowledge he has within his mind and heart. In today's podcast, we've covered the basics of Sanatan Dharma, the basics of Hinduism. This is a fantastic intro episode when it comes to understanding Hindu culture, the Hindu faith, and the Sanatani value system. He's my all-time favorite guest, and today we're covering one of my all-time favorite topics. It's all about ancient Indian culture and Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism on TRS. The greatest of all time guest is back. How are you, sir?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Absolutely fantastic.
It's been a couple of years since the first ever conversation that we had with you, which was about the basics of Tantra.
Right.
What I anticipate is that in these last 2 years, there have been a lot of subscribers who've been added,
Right.
who are probably meeting you for the first time.
Sure.
And secondly, I hope that this conversation actually makes it to the global realm, because there's a lot of people all over the world who do not have a correct understanding of the word Tantra, as well as a correct understanding of what the world calls Hinduism, that we call Sanatan Dharma.
Right.
So this is almost like a retelling of the first episode 2 years in, after you've put me through some practices as well, and after we've had so many elaborate
Right.
conversations.
Right.
So this might be a long one, but
Sure.
welcome
That's
back, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, how are you?
All fantastic. Before we start, Joy Ma Kamakhya, Joy Matara, Joy Bhairav Baba.
Joy Ma Kamakhya, Joy Ma Tara, Joy Bhairav Baba.
Yes.
Okay. And the deities are with us.
Yes, absolutely. Deities are the main.
Okay. I think a great place to start this conversation is to explain what Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism is to people who have not grown up in India.
Okay. A short answer to this would be there is a multiplicity of philosophies, paths, and deities which have organically developed in this specific landmass we call India, and they have been tied together by a larger philosophical string that passes through the different beads of a mala. Like if you are wearing a necklace, there's a string that passes through. So there is an organic philosophy that connects all of these together. So there is one reality, let's call that reality as Brahman, or the Atman, or the self, or something that is both Saguna, which is it has qualities in it, as well as Nirguna, which is beyond qualities.
This is what the West calls God and the world calls the divine.
Divine, yes, but God, let's not bring God right away. God is equivalent to what we call Ishvara, where this Brahman takes on a kind of a divine personality. Okay. So Brahman is not with or without a personality. It is something that we can imagine and something that we cannot even imagine. It's beyond human imagination. It covers everything, yet it is beyond everything. Next, worshipping of the Brahman is a little difficult for most people because you need to have a soul that has already gone through all the cycles of birth and rebirth, and kind of your karmas, your desires have been fulfilled. So there's nothing else that you want. So that is why there is this philosophy that say neti neti, which means that you say that not this, not this, not this. When you remove everything, that which is left, beyond which there is nothing, that is the ultimate reality. Now, this is the perspective of the sannyasis, monks who have given up life. So they want their perspective to be that of the Brahman, which is a very neutral perspective. Neutral means it is completely unbiased. It sees good and bad, day and night, dharma, adharma, everything in a kind of a balanced way. Just close to this, but something that is formed, saguna. Saguna is one of the word guna means qualities, something that has a quality. A name also is a guna. So there are these cosmic beings we call devatas, deities. Lord Shiva, Durga, Ma Durga, Kali, Bhairava. These are deities. Okay, these are very fantastic beings, almost in the realm of the Brahman only. That we worship these beings, and when we worship these beings, they have their own innate qualities and specific nature. So the worship is tailored according to their nature and qualities, and accordingly they may provide certain of those qualities as blessings to us. So to put it mildly, Hindu would, if I have to worship, say, uh, if wealth is an issue for somebody, they may worship Mother Lakshmi, Goddess Lakshmi. She's the deity of the wealth. Okay, if we worship Bhairava, for example, he removes fears from an individual, so you become stronger inside. Okay, if similarly, if you want wisdom, for example, you might worship Saraswati, or you might worship even Neela Saraswati, which is the tantric form of deity, tantric paddhati of deity. So basically, there is a collection of these great grand gods, deities we have. Each of them have their own gunas and tattvas. Gunas means qualities, and tattvas is the fundamental essence. Okay, and the worship methodology is based on these qualities of the deity. So, which means when we are worshipping, we are trying to get close to the devata, to the deity. Devata is the term we use. It's a deity. So, if you're worshipping Shiva, you offer Bel Patra, you do Abhishekam of the Shiva Linga. If you're worshipping Vishnu, you offer Tulsi. I'm just saying in a very simple manner. So, if you're worshipping Devi, you do homas, and there are other things you offer. Depends on the deity. So, it is the worship methodology is designed based on what is it that the deity likes, and we follow accordingly. So basically there's a democracy of choice among the followers of Sanatana Dharma based on what they want and their own nature. So somebody may want to worship Krishna because that's perhaps what resonates with him. Somebody may want to worship Hanuman, somebody may want to worship Tara, Ugratara. Okay, it depends on what resonates with you, because the rishis, and rishis are the ancient masters who saw the Vedas first, noted them down, kind of. They saw them means the Vedas are supposed to be eternally existent in the ether. Okay, it's not that they composed it, they saw it, and there is an occult transmission that happens, and then they passed it on to their shishyas and others. So they are the greatest of the masters. Our whole Hindu dharma is based on the rishis. Whichever deity it may be, whichever path of sadhana it may be, it is the rishis who have given us these paths. Okay, so this is very, very briefly speaking how we understand the dharma. Sanatana Dharma understands religion to be, and the question comes: why do you worship deities? Because it transforms you eventually from a human condition to a divine condition.
Okay. Transforming into a divine condition or into the next stage of consciousness is what I believe the goal of Sanatan Dharma is.
Correct.
Sanatan Dharma is what Hindus call Hinduism.
Right.
The question I have for you is, how would you explain what modern day Hindu life is to a foreigner? For example, with Christians, they go to church. They have their own prayers. In Islam, there are rules. You have to do certain things in the course of your lifetime. You have to live your life a certain way. What is the Hindu equivalent of that? I think there's very few rules that are followed by every single Hindu.
Right.
And the West knows certain rules about Sanatan Dharma, which is that we don't eat beef,
Correct.
that we have multiple gods,
Right.
and that this is a mystical faith. I think that's pretty much what most of the West understands about Sanatan Dharma.
Correct.
Would you disagree with me? And or the next question was, what would you like to add to this?
Well, I completely agree with you. So, basic idea, as I just explained, is that there is a democracy of choice that's given to the followers of the Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, and accordingly, one can choose. So there is no compulsion that you have to worship X deity or Y deity or different other deities. So according to the devata that you want to connect to, there are certain rules in which you proceed and you follow those rules and you practice the path of upasana. And also there is the other thing, that our dharma is basically not, it's not a monastic dharma, which means that everybody has to become a monk leaving society. No, there are people who will become monks, sannyasis. So there is a stage of life we call the ashrama has different stages, where there's brahmacharya and this and grihastha ashrama and this and that. At the end you go into what is known as sannyasa. So when you have kind of experienced life in a full and wholesome manner, then you may decide, okay, now I retire from life and I pursue that ultimate goal of being one with the Brahman.
But not everyone actually does that in modern day India.
Correct. And it is not even compulsory that everyone has to do that. There is another misconception that people may have, because it may seem like, you can do whatever you want type of thing. But that's also not true. So when you are engaging in the upasana of a deity, then the rules according to which the upasana has to be done, that are fixed. You cannot change that. So, for example, the restriction of on consumption of beef is universal across all sampradayas, all branches, all methods of worship. So, whether it is the Vedic method or Tantric method, that is a non-negotiable. That's a clear border. Okay. Then accordingly, if you're worshipping Shiva, then there maybe you have to offer Bel Patra. You cannot just, randomly change to something else and say that, oh, it's just about bhakti. No. So those rules are important, because those rules help you to realize the deity. Okay. So that is the key idea, in my opinion, when so far as the Upasana Paddhati is concerned. So an average Hindu may have his Ishta Devata, a deity he likes best. Ishta means good, the deity that does good to you. Somebody may be a Ganpati Upasaka. Somebody, Upasana means basically somebody is doing worship of the deity. Somebody may be a Bhairava Upasaka. Somebody may be a Durga Upasaka. So you follow the rules of the method by which you can approach the deities.
Got it. You mentioned something about methods of worship.
Correct.
Very crucial to talk about this, because this is something that modern day Hindus mostly don't understand.
Yes.
And often there's clashes between different sects of Hindus over methods of worship, as is the case with any world religion. There's different sects and there are issues between the sects. So let's talk about this modern day manifestation of different Hindus misunderstanding each other. But also let's talk about methods of worship in general.
Right. So that's correct. So there are different sects within. So instead of the word sect, the word we use is sampradaya. Sampradaya is a method of worship, okay, or a particular somebody connected to a deity or followers of a deity. Let's put it this way: upasakas of a deity. Okay. Inside the sampradaya, there may be even more sub-sampradayas. For example, Vaishnavism is worship of Vishnu. There could be many sampradayas inside Vaishnavism. Sri Vaishnavism is there. Then there's a Dvaita Vaishnavism is there. Then there is the Hare Krishna sect. The ISKCON followers are there. So there could be, then there'll be slight differences in the way they approach them. The gurus will be very different. The methods may be different. But what ties all these things together, first thing has to be understood, is that Hinduism is not a religion of one book, it's a religion of multiple books. Okay, the Shastras that we call, the holy texts, they govern the fundamentals of worship. They govern the fundamentals of, there are two aspects, both lifestyle as well as worship. So far as the fundamentals of worship are concerned, they are very categorically mentioned how to do this and how to do that and this and that, and we have to follow those. Okay, there is no sampradaya or kind of a sect of believers of a particular god or a deity within Hindu Dharma who would survive the test of time if they don't adhere to the rules mentioned in the texts related to that deity. It is very, very important. So when sampradayas come into, there are sampradayas that have historically come into existence, for example, different times. So they have to pass through a phase where they have to prove to the others, for example. And we had a very healthy debate of criticism, counter criticisms, answers, debates, at least till the 13th century. There is to be very fierce, what used to be called the Shastrartha, which is that, debates basically between different sampradayas, each one claiming that our methodology of worship or the way we do it or our philosophy is stronger than yours. So there's no physical violence, but there is absolutely free reign to debates, points, counterpoints. And it is through this churning process that many philosophies became more refined. So there is a complete culture of, agreement and disagreement. There's nothing wrong in that. And it is mandatory on the followers or the intellectual followers of a certain sect to defend their path, defend their methodology of worship in the light of the Shastras. Shastra is the holy text. For example, let's say that, if you're worshipping Vishnu, then you might have to, you follow the Vishnu Purana or the Bhagavad Purana. And then from there are other texts also like this. Or if you're going to the Tantra, then there are the vast array of the Tantras. And you choose that, okay, what we are doing is based on XYZ Tantra, the dictums that are mentioned in this text, etc. So that the textual, it's like that peg where you tie your philosophy. That's very important. Broadly speaking, there are two fundamental paths of philosophical paths of worship. One is the Vedika. Vedika means it's not just the four Vedas, but there are the Veda Samhitas are there, the Brahmanas are there, Aranyakas are there, and then the Upanishads. Upanishads are the philosophical part of the Vedas, where the Vedas are more the ritualistic path. Rituals are a method of communication, basically, because the deity is very vast, is infinitely powerful, grander, vaster, eternal compared to an average human being. So these rituals were devised by the rishis so that you have a meaningful way of communicating with that energy.
Yeah, this is the point where a lot of people all over the world start to disconnect with these kind of conversations, because the question that arises in a listener's mind is, hey, why should I be doing this religious practice?
Yeah.
And truth be told, how does one explain ritualistic practice to the average person? My only explanation is, until you experience it yourself,
Yeah.
after having an educated guidance through the process, that's when you'll be convinced.
Right.
But most people are not even willing to physically put their bodies through that kind of a practice.
Yeah. So I agree to that. But on the other hand, I believe that rituals are very powerful. I mean, not just religion. Every time there is a ritual, everywhere in a human being's life, there are always rituals. Rituals are methods by which you align yourself to a particular space and time and an energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up so much is because I've been in countless rooms where if I'm trying to explain this aspect of Sanatan Dharma, I am stopped by someone else saying, no, you know what, bro, this is where I switch off. But the only answer I have is, hey, experience it yourself. If you feel that way after a month of performing a ritual regularly, then we'll revisit this conversation.
My only take in this is that, so one, first of all, our dharma, Sanatan Dharma, had never been a religion that preaches. So we have not had, we don't normally, broadly speaking, for most of the places, we don't like go ahead and say ki, you should follow this, you should follow my god or this or that. So I am not, if you don't want to follow it, absolutely fine, there's no compulsion. But if you want to follow it, you have to do it this way. It's like this. Suppose you are in school. Suppose there's to give you another example, suppose there's a child, he goes to school, and in fact, when you start following rituals, the other thing that happens is that people say that I need to understand every step. No, you will not understand every step on day one. When a child goes to class 1, he is told that you learn the tables, you learn multiplication, division. He can ask a question, what good is this for me? Why is he doing it? His parents have told him, his teacher has told him, right? It's only when he grows to a certain age and he interacts with the world outside that he sees that these are things very useful that he had learned at a younger age. Exactly same way rituals work.
This prayer ritual that we call puja, this is what you see in every Hindu household that practices Hinduism.
Right.
And as a kid, when you're growing up in a Hindu household, you will have a moment where you'll ask your parents, your relatives, hey, why are we doing this? And often there's no answer. the answer that you get is, this is just how it's done. At age 29, when I met you for the first time, I understood what a puja means, what a havan means. I think that that's the question that the world has when it comes to Hinduism as well. Why do we do these kind of rituals? And why are there so many rituals? Why are there so many holidays in India?
So many holidays, though, is a different question. But the rituals are designed at a very sound philosophical base. So it is not random. That's what I first said, that everything that we do comes from the rishis. They have codified it in the Shastras. Shastras are eternal. They have a power within them, a Shakti within them, by which they have survived and they will always survive. Okay. Specifically, those aspects of the Shastras that deal with the methodology of worship. How do you worship a deity? How do you worship this deity? There are two kinds of evidences, pramana, that you can get from the world. One is that which you get from your five senses. One you can get from inference, observation, and this and that. And then there is a third thing, something that comes from the astral and the occult realms which you cannot see, hear, feel, touch, but those exist. And that is an element where initially, for an average upasaka, you will not understand because you have no experience of it, but you'll have to take it on faith. That shraddha, that faith is also an important part of any religious, of dharmic practice, religious practice, etc. So far as the basic puja paddhati is concerned, we offer basically 5 tattvas at the initial stages to any deity. Tattva means 5 elements. So we believe that 5 elements, water, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, these things have composed the whole universe. Along with that, there is also buddhi, your intelligence, then there is the ego, and then there are other tattvas also. Okay. So these things, of these 5 elements are the materialistic, the crux, the foundations on which the world that we live in, the physical world, is created. So whenever you are worshipping a deity, one of the basic pujas we do is that you offer a little bit of something that represents the prithvi tattva, which is the earth element, then something that represents the jal tattva, something that represents the agni tattva when you're lighting a diya, something that represents the vayu tattva. Okay, when you're chanting a mantra, what is it? It's the air that is changing. Okay, and something that represents the akash tattva. Akash ke liye we offer a flower or something. So these are the 5 things. So basically you are telling the deity, all that I am, these 5 have been composed, I am surrendering everything onto you.
The earth would be like the kumkum or something.
Kumkum, exactly.
The powders.
Yes.
Okay.
And the jal tattva could be even a naivedyam, a food offering that you're giving to the deity, because it's made of water, things like that. So this is the broad idea.
The flowers represent the ether.
Yeah, flower represents the akash tattva. Akash is the among the tattvas, it is the most the elevated one, and elevated in the sense very subtle. It's not easy to reach the akash tattva, but anybody who practices will have to eventually reach and pass through the akash tattva.
Gotcha. Okay. This is a basic explanation of what a Hindu prayer ritual is.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
What we reference as puja.
Yeah, this is what we do as a puja. There are elaborate methods, but this is the basic one.
Okay. In an even more basic manner, a lot of Hindus in the modern day will have a small temple in their house, or they might even have a small statue of a deity.
Correct.
Light a diya next to it, keep an incense stick
Yes.
for a good fragrance around it, and just maybe not even know mantras, but have their private prayer and just have a conversation with their deity. Is that also accepted in our faith?
Yes, that is accepted. So it is. There are 2 ways of doing it. One is that you do it in a proper manner, by which if you do it in the as I mentioned. So these are the rules. If you don't follow the rules, it's not that somebody is going to come and beat you up or something like that. But what happens is that the energy that you are going to generate is going to be a bit haphazard, may take a bit more time to produce the correct result.
God. This is where I want to bring in the fact that there are very, very deep layers of mysticism which are intertwined with Hinduism.
Yes.
That many Hindus don't understand in the first
Right.
place. Now, how do you explain mystical benefits to the average person who's all over the globe? For me, it could be as simple as just having a calmer mind.
Right.
I think if you think it's the right way to move forward, let's begin by explaining what a mantra is, because that is also an aspect of puja. And then we can head into the world of Tantra.
Okay, fine. So mantra is basically a set of divinized words, okay, by which one is able to connect to the energy of a deity. Very simply put. Or not just connect to the energy, sometimes a mantra may be a set of divinized words that may manifest something. Okay, somebody may chant a mantra for good health, somebody may chant a mantra to get rich or some financial benefits, but majorly the mantras are um directed towards the deities as a way of connecting. So it starts from the Rig Veda, Vedas itself. The Vedas itself are the Vedic, the slokas of the Veda, the verses of the Veda are mantras in themselves. Even the names of deities are mantras. So it's a way in which you manifest the energy encoded into it, that mystical saying, chant, or something like that. But it is non-changeable. That is very important. Each mantra has its own structure, as it's like a chant or a a line or whatever it may be. You cannot modify it in any way. Okay. Some mantras, for example, the Vedic mantras may require an intonation of chanting also, not just normally chanting. Okay, a particular way.
What is intonation?
Intonation, your voice modulation is required to
Okay.
do it. Okay, specifically. But so far as the Puranic mantras, the Puranas which came in later, mantras that come to us from the Puranas, or the Tantric mantras, it is not always necessary to have an intonation. Many of the chanting is done mentally, internally. Okay, and as one keeps chanting the name of the deity or the mantra of the deity, it helps that individual to connect with the deity. That is the first and the fundamental method of Devata Upasana. Deity worship, apart from the puja and all that is the external elements that we are giving in. Mantra is something very personal. It flows with your breath, with your recitation. Okay, so it modulates your breathing, it modulates the Vayu Tattva inside you, and it can lead you to the Akash Tattva. So mantra japa is the key method of upasana in Sanatan Dharma.
And you're allowed to pray to more than one deity in our faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, there are many people and many advanced people who worship more than one deities. It's perfectly all right.
Yet there's a battle between the followers of multiple deities.
Yeah, so it's not exactly a battle. I look at it as a culture of healthy conflict. Let's put it this way. So it's perfectly all right. Criticism is fine. Answering the criticism is also fine. In fact, the battles that happen today, I feel are much less than perhaps that used to happen at a much longer time.
Really?
Oh, there was a 600 year of intellectual, exchanges, kind of, for lack of words, Shastratra battle between two of the biggest Vedantic philosophies of Advaita, which is the non-dual philosophy of Adi Shankaracharya, and the Dvaitavada of Madhvacharya from South India. And 600 years, one after the other, greatest of stalwarts from each of the camps. And they were people with excellent, much beyond the average IQ levels of an individual, both spiritually, intellectually, in every sense. And they kept arguing with each other, discussing, debating their philosophies, and trying to show why their philosophy is better than others. 600 years. It's not even a one-day thing. And
Who won in the end?
it's not about who won. Debates never. My understanding of debates is that they never lead to winners or victors. Those who, losers, or that's the wrong word, but people follow what they have to follow. But this literature, now, this is the quality of the debate was very high. That is to be understood. It's not about mudslinging and all that. So they are doing finest of analysis of the philosophies, okay, and saying, okay, I follow this, you follow that, yours is wrong because of XYZ reason, and that the an intellectual from that side says no, yours is wrong because he counter analyzes that and gives a rebuttal to that. So like this, it continued for 600 years.
Got it.
Mm.
Why did it stop at year 600?
I think people got tired.
Okay. Do you think that the modern Hindu understands Sanatan Dharma?
No,
Broadly speaking.
mostly no.
What percentage of Hindus do you think actually understand it?
There is some, but majorly they don't. But that's also because of certain historical realities that we had to pass through in the last century or so, because of colonization and things like that, etc. So a country that is already colonized, or there are foreign powers, it changes the mindset. So you look at life in a very different way. Once independence comes in, you think that perhaps The first thing that is required is a more materialistic growth in life, and religion and dharma can be an also ran, so you don't focus so much on it. You think that dharma is anyway, it will carry on, it's all right, I can do some puja, but the main thing is that how do I get a better job, how do I go abroad, how do I make more money, and things like that. This had been the mindset for many decades in India post independence, which has also resulted in various misconceptions when it comes to understanding of dharma. And I'm talking about Hindus only, not non-Hindus. It's now that there is a sudden reawakening of interest among Hindus to understand dharma in the right manner and practice that dharma. At least some change, though, I definitely see even among the youth.
Okay. Yeah, I think Gen Zs are way more into
Yes,
spiritual
yes,
practice
yes,
than the predecessors were.
right. Hmm.
An outcome of the times and information being that much more widespread. And honestly, I hate saying this, but mental health issues being that much more widespread,
That's also maybe another issue,
right?
another point. Yeah.
When your head gets
Hmm.
completely scrambled, eventually you turn to what your soul knows the best, which is
Right. Hmm.
practice and faith. You spoke about misconceptions in modern day Hindu minds.
Hmm.
Can you speak about some of these misconceptions?
No, I see on the top of the mind, the first thing I mentioned, for example, there is a common misunderstanding that Hinduism means just, there are no rules, I can do whatever I want. The other unfortunate aspect of Hinduism, Hindus are that very, very often a large section of them have not cultivated the habit of reading the scriptures. Today, we live in an age where every scripture is available. You just have to buy it from any, of the shops that publish these books, or the internet, etc., and you need to have the patience to read them. Okay, you may not understand it directly, then there are good commentaries on it, but nobody spends time reading them.
What's a great starting point?
You can, if I always say that the best starting point means, if you are an upasaka, say you want to worship uh, Devi, for example, so you read the Devi Bhagavatam, for example. So you pick up a text, a Purana related to the deity, and then read it religiously, read it multiple times, read it with commentaries, and it'll, every time you read it along with your practice, it is going to bring about a change in your understanding.
Okay.
See, the scriptures are like this. They are like great works of art. They sustain for many, many centuries, because every time you read it, your consciousness has changed and your understanding becomes more refined. Same happens with scriptures.
Okay. For the longest time in my life, I thought that all of Hinduism is encapsulated into the Bhagavad Gita.
That's the capital misconception of Hindus.
And I'm saying this with a lot of respect for the Bhagavad Gita. And so are you,
Yes.
right? Let's talk about the Bhagavad Gita in general first. Then let's talk about this misconception.
I love the Bhagavad Gita. I have multiple, translations or commentaries on the Gita that I keep from my own references. It's a fantastic text, but it's a text of Vedanta. You have to understand. I mentioned this initially. Hinduism is a religion path of multiple texts. It's like a library. Okay, so you go into the library, you see the catalog, and you decide, "Ki, I want to read books on geography." So you go to the section on geography. I want to read on physics. You go to the section on physics. If you read a book on physics and say, I want English literature from this, then you are messing up things. That is what has happened with the Gita being taken as a universal thumb rule for all kinds of sampradayas. Gita is wonderful and a terrific Vedantic text. In fact, it is such a high level text that to internalize the Gita is not at all easy. It's one thing to read the Gita, it's another thing to implement those the instructions that Lord Krishna gives to Arjuna in someone's life. That's very, very difficult. It's a text only the highest of sannyasis can internalize in their life. Reading is not enough. It is not a book. Gita is not about mantra japa. Gita is not about just reading. It's about internalizing that into the smallest of activities in your life. And it is so tough that very few people are of that kind of an inner makeup. Because Vedanta, which is the end of the Vedas, Anta means end of the Vedas, is a very high philosophy. It is a philosophy, um, in my opinion, it's a philosophy fit for the best of sannyasis. It is not necessarily a philosophy that an average person on the road can follow. For them, and it's, by the way, I don't mean when I say Vedanta is for a select few people, I do not mean that it is the only, therefore, there's a human mind tends to compartmentalize things and say, oh, so it's very high, so I only follow Vedanta because I want the highest thing. No, that's absolutely foolish. It is one path for us, for general people, for everybody, there are the worship of the deities that has been popularized. Even the Vedantic sampradayas, the Shankara mathas and all that, if you observe how they do ritualistic upasana of deities, that's like the fuel. The philosophy is your car. Without the fuel, it is not going to run, and the fuel at the end of the day comes back to the upasana of deities. So even if you don't understand the philosophy fully, if you have a solid practice of connecting to a deity over years, it is going to bring about a transformation. End of the day, the goal of dharma is to transform the individual.
Okay. What's written within the Bhagavad Gita?
It's a communication between Lord Krishna and Arjuna in the battlefield when Arjuna is facing a dilemma. Okay, Arjuna is facing a tremendous dilemma that till now the war was building up. There's a conflict between the brothers, and it reached a point when all negotiations of peace have failed completely. Okay, Krishna finally announces that now it is going to be war because nothing else can be done. So he goes there, he's in the battlefield, and then he suddenly sees that the other side comprises of his own relatives, people he has grown up with, his own gurus, in fact. In traditional Hindu dharma, guru is very high. You cannot, guru, you cannot attack your guru or you cannot do anything. But this text is so powerful, it creates a setting where Arjuna is a man of action. He is like a man who's very dharmic, who is very he's not an intellectual. He's not the guy who will sit behind a desk and contemplate things. He's a man of action, and he's a terrific warrior. He's a dharmic warrior. He is faced a dilemma where he has to fight with his own relatives, with his own gurus, and not just fight, perhaps even kill them in the battlefield. And then he is confused in his mind, and he tells Krishna, who is the divine, who becomes his charioteer. Okay, and he tells that it's better, I don't want to go into the fight. What is the use of all this? I'll just retire. And secondly, and this conversation is right at the beginning, and he says that suppose we fight and I kill them, then what happens is that it causes a disbalance in dharma. Many things in the societal perspective of that era. This is one of the arguments he gives. What is the use of fighting against the gurujans and the relatives and all that? Better than that, let's just leave everything. So a philosophy, if there were a philosophy which would believe that the ultimate goal of life is retiring from life, then you'd say the best advice is that leave everything and go. But Krishna does just the opposite. He starts his conversation by saying that you speak like a pandit, like a scholarly man, but you don't have that kind of depth of the reflection that in activity that a pandit actually has. So basically, he's trying to say that your words are hollow. And then he slowly builds up an argument step by step that lasts for 18 chapters. First, he says that you are a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya is a warrior. A warrior should not run away from the battlefield. Then he slowly explains the spiritual understanding of things. And in the text, in the middle, he explains karma yoga, what is the essence of activity without being attached to activity. Before that, in the chapter 2 itself, he goes and explains that who is a muni, who is a rishi, is a spiritually elevated person. He is devoid of anger, devoid of hatred, who has a self-controlled mind, whose mind is single-pointedly devoted to the divine. That is a man of high intelligence. Like this, he gives various explanations. Then he elaborates on karma yoga. How do you attain that while you are in life? So he says that you perform your activities, perform what needs to be done, but do it with a certain degree of detachment. And once you do that, then your karma yoga slowly perfects. Then there is jnana that comes, knowledge, wisdom. Then in the course, he also explains that how to attain liberation from life completely, moksha, so that you don't come back again. Next, he even goes about the properties, the nature of the divine, the Vibhuti Yoga, which means that how the divine manifests as the best of all things. So that's a beautiful chapter, I think the 10th chapter of the Gita, where he's speaking in third person. He's saying that among the Vrishnis, Vrishni is the clan in which Krishna is born. Among the Vrishnis, I am Krishna. Among the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. Okay. Among the Rudras, I am Shiva. Like this. Among the warriors, the generals, I am Skanda. And then he goes on, among the gamblers, I am the art of gambling. So basically, he's trying to say that in any given set, the best of that set is divine. And it could be anything. It did not be somebody. See, even gambling, he's using it as an example. What is the best thing in gambling? The art of gambling. The peak. That which is cut above the average. That excellence in life is always a manifestation of the divine. Okay, and then he changes, he shows his Vishwarupa, the cosmic form. Krishna shows his cosmic form. Arjuna then bows down to him, says he gets scared because he's never seen like that. And then surrenderance comes. Bhakti. So bhakti gets built. First there is karma yoga. Your activities in the life, you cannot run away from that. There's a beautiful play, sloka where Arjuna, Krishna says that there is nothing that I need to do. And yet he takes birth, and he, as an avatara to help society to develop consciousness, he doesn't need to do anything. There's absolutely no obligation. He has no duty. We have duties. We have duties to our parents, this and that. We are not independent. Nobody is independent, right? But the divine is completely independent. Yet the divine manifests in this plane, helps society. So he says that the implication is that if the divine is doing it, then you also have your duties. You cannot run away from your duties, but you do your duties with a degree of detachment. You're not attached to anybody and anything. A part of you stands apart while you do what needs to be done. Okay, and as you keep doing that, there will be a manifestation of knowledge, jnana. So you will have what is called the Purusha and the Prakriti. Prakriti is your automated biological body and nature that comes from the natural birth that you get. And in that there is a soul that steps aside from it and observes. Every activity is being done, and yet there's a part of you that is standing apart and observing. That is the Purusha. Okay. And after that is bhakti. When you see the divine, any form, any manner, any deity. And mind you, the Gita is such a powerful text. It is not only Krishna. If you are a worshipper of Kali, for example, you can as well in your mind replace that these conversations are happening between Kali and, say, as an Upasaka, you. She's telling you this. It could be anybody. So that is why in the Vibhuti Yoga, he takes it to the third person. He's saying that among the Vishnus, I am Krishna. Who speaks like that? Who speaks like? He's not saying, so he's saying, I am among the Pandavas, I'm Arjuna. So he's transcended his own, even the form of Krishna has transcended who he is. Okay. And like this, so bhakti comes when you have a divine experience. Then all these things immediately you surrender. After that, then there are various other explanations of asuric nature, daiva nature, all these explanations Krishna gives to him. What is the way of the world? He explains the importance of the scriptures, why it has to be followed. And he says that you have to follow the methods that have been given. Because if you don't do that, then you are following your own mind. So if you follow your own mind, you will not succeed in this path of sadhana. If your mind was capable enough, you would not need the advice in the first place. So that is why this is there. That is why this path has been set. And as you follow it, you develop yourself. Another important concept is that while the divine has both dharma and adharma, so the word dharma comes from a root which means to sustain. So that which sustains is dharma. Okay. So that worship of the deity sustains us, helps us to grow stronger in all qualities. So he says the divine, ultimate divine is balanced. It has a balanced eye. With a uniform eye, it looks at both black and white, dharma, adharma. But we cannot do that. We are in the world of duality. So you have to change, you have to differentiate between what is dharma, what is adharma, and stay away from adharma, because it is going to pull you down. Okay. So you follow the path of dharma and follow the scriptures, the mandated things. At the end of this full discourse, he tells to Arjuna that now that I've told you this great secret, now do what you wish to do. There's no force involved in this. The Gita has no force. He's not saying that now that I've given you this, so you go ahead and do this. This is a compulsory path. No, he says that now you contemplate and you decide what is the best thing you want to do. And by the end of the discourse, Arjuna decides that its duty is important. It's not enough. See, he's not saying that I need to run away from manifestation in the world. I have to be here, I have to perform the duty, but do it in a detached manner. In that, you will attain liberation.
Okay. The reason I think the Bhagavad Gita has become so popular on a world stage is because it answers a lot of modern day problems.
Yeah, but my take is that what I told you here, it will take a lot of time for somebody to understand this just by just reading the Gita. It's not a conclusion I reached in one reading of the Gita. Gita is a text that is meant for Vedanta. I repeat this. Gita is not a text meant for just Upasana of a deity. It is a text meant for Vedanta. If you're suited for Vedanta, if somebody is temperamentally suited for Vedanta, then Gita is a fantastic text. I have seen people in my life who know the Gita by heart. Okay? 700 verses by heart. And yet, when the first tragedy strikes in life, they are completely clueless like any other average person. So, my question is, what is the use of reading the Gita if you are not able to harmonize the teachings of the Gita? It is not meant for everybody. Because at the time when the Gita was made popular, it was popular, but it was popular among the Vedantins. At a time when there was a certain amount of, what it happens in a colonized state, the Hindu intellectuals and the others, they wanted one text which we could show that, see, it synthesizes our philosophy. As you, the same questions that you have, it was even more. Today the world is at least well connected. That time the foreigners came in and they see that, oh, they're like completely clueless what is happening, this and that. So they, no, we just have one text, we follow this. That is what happened with the Gita, and that went on till now with the basic understanding, given that Hindus don't read anything else, so they have assumed that the Gita is by default the only thumb rule text. No, there are other texts also, all are beautiful.
I think that this is a good point to open up the chapter on Tantra,
Right.
because in many ways I feel like it's the nucleus of Sanatan Dharma. At least that's how I look at it.
Okay.
But the word Tantra has unfortunately gotten a negative connotation in the public eye globally. How do you explain Tantra to someone who's never heard the word?
Tantra is a method of worship, okay, fundamentally. Like there is a the Vedic methodology of worship. Tantra is also a way of approaching deities and worshipping. That's the simplest explanation of Tantra. In Lord Shiva mentions in the Tantras that in the Kali Yuga, the main Kali Yuga is the era, that the yuga that we are in, cycles of time, where because of the huge amounts of general level of corruption, both physical corruption as well as moral corruption, and not just moral, there is sound pollution, all these are corruptions. Okay, the quality of life degrades as the yugas pass by. And in this era, the easiest way and the most suitable way for human beings to connect to the deities, and the fastest way also, by the way, not just the easiest, fastest way to connect to deities, same deities, is following the methodology of Upasana given by the Tantras and the Agamas. Okay, so he says very clearly the Vedic methods will recite backwards, and it is the Tantras that will come in the forefront and will become very popular. Now,
The Agamas and the
Agamas are
Tantras.
texts,
Okay.
okay,
Gotcha.
related, closely related to Tantras. Okay, so it comes like a transmission. It's Shiva who gives this. It comes to the rishis. From the rishis it passes down to great masters. They codify this into texts, and then we have various sampradayas of Tantra. Now, we are, to give you an example, in the traditional reckoning of time, we are in 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga extends up to a huge amount of time. This is not even 5% of the total span of time. This is the traditional reckoning. There are many people these days who claim that Kali Yuga is over and all that. I'm not getting into that. Traditional Hinduism considers this is just the tip of the Kali Yuga. So there is much more level of corruption and degradation of the human race and society in general that is yet to come in going ahead. Okay. In this, today in India, the most popular of all religious festivals, Hindu festivals, is the Navratras, if you look at it that way. Okay, it's one of the biggest festivals. It is followed across India. Yeah, the method of following may be different. In North India, you follow it for 9 days. In Bengal side, we do the Durga Puja for 4 days, things like that. But Navratra is a very, very key ritual that is followed, or perhaps the most popular ritual right now. And the whole germination, the basis of Navratras are somewhere from Devi Upasana in the Tantras, whether it is the Tantric Puranas or the Tantra actual Tantric texts. By Tantric Purana, I mean the Kalika Purana and all that, texts like that. So that is where, so in a way, the prediction that Lord Shiva gives, he's not saying, he's not arguing, he's making a statement, a prediction that in the Kali Yuga, it is the Tantras that will be the primary method of Upasana. It has already started happening. When the method, so people do Devi Upasana during Navratras, but is it coming from the Vedas? No. The germination of the Upasana of Devi, in whatever manner they're doing, is coming from the Tantras. So Tantra is already becoming mainstream without people realizing it. And it's just a matter of time when Tantra, and I firmly believe that in the coming decades, in its truest form, will become like a de facto religion, a de facto dharmic path in Hinduism among masses. It is a time, it is a thing that's time has come. And there are forces which are aligned strongly in this manner, and it is going to happen. It's not dependent on A or B individual, but it is like the thing that is time has come.
You're saying most Hindus are going to adopt tantric practices.
Method, some of the other tantric method of upasana of deities.
What is a very basic tantric upasana that is being followed already?
Navratra, for example. When you're doing the mantras, say you're doing the Navarna mantra, which is one of the mantras of Devi, most popular mantra of Ma Durga, which is like widely practiced across uh, India, though there are restrictions in terms of there is a guru and all that needed, but even without that also I've seen innumerable people chanting the Navarna mantra across. So its popularity has skyrocketed. It is a mantra that comes from the tantras. It's a tantric mantra. Vija mantras.
Okay.
Vija mantra is a seed mantra. Tantra is this concept that from a deity, his energy, his or her energy can be encapsulated in a sound formation which does not have a specific meaning. But as you keep repeating that specific sound, and the repetition has its other rules also along with it. When those rules are followed, it's sufficiently chanted, which could be in lakhs and lakhs, by the way. Following certain rules, it starts manifesting just like a seed develops into a tree. So it starts manifesting the energy of the deity inside that individual. That is a Vija mantra. This very concept comes from the tantras.
Okay. An average Hindu who's staying in South Mumbai or South Delhi, they say they're waking up to Hinduism again. But the word Tantra as well as the phrase Tantric practices seem a little too far away for them from their heart. Right? Are they doing any practices right now by going for puja, by doing the puja? Is that Tantric in any way?
It could be. It could be. At least it is Puranic. Puranic means the 5 tattvas that we are giving. It comes from the various Puranas and all that. But there is an overlap with the Tantras. Overlap automatically happens when you are using the mantras. For example, there are, along with when you are offering the 5 tattvas, there are basic mantras with which you offer. Those mantras have bijas. Vijas are all tantric. In fact, Ganpati tantras are innumerable. There is a vija, there is a Shadakshari, 6 akshara mantra of Ganpati. The texts say that you have to imagine Ganpati like a wild elephant in mast. Okay, mast means when an elephant is in sexually excited state. Okay, that kind of. And there are other iconographic descriptions of the image and things like that, etc. With a certain sankalpa. Sankalpa is before you start, you make a promise to the deity. I'm going to do this amount of japa. 6 lakh japa of that mantra within a certain phase of period of time. If it is done, along with that, there are fire rituals. It will bring about a tremendous experience of Ganpati.
Okay. So there's one version of praying as a Hindu where you sit in front of your temple, pray, you do a puja, you chadao prasad, you chadao flowers. This is what we've inherited from our parents and our grandparents.
Yeah.
And now someone's watching this Rajarshi Nandy podcast and thinking to themselves, hey, I kind of want to take up tantric practices because they're perhaps a sharper, faster way of going about spiritual growth in the path that we know as Sanatan Dharma.
Right.
Any of the deities in their house, in their mandir, say they have a Ganpati Murti, they have a Hanumanji, they have a Krishna Bhagwan. Each of these, just like any other Hindu deity, has a form of tantric practice associated with it. But in order to take it up, you need to be guided by a guru.
Right.
How do you find a guru?
How do you find a guru is the toughest question. There are no easy answers to it. So, until you find a guru, what do?
Yeah.
That is the most important question. So, until you find a guru, you still do practices which are allowed to be done without a guru. So, dharma has been based like that. There are things that you can do. For example, just taking the name of Ganapati or the 108 names of Ashtottara Nama, we call it 108 names of a deity. So, Ashtottara Nama of Ganpati can be chanted by anybody.
Every deity has an Ashtottara.
Every deity. They have a Shastranama also, 1,000 names. Okay. And some deities will have multiple versions of the Shastranama.
So you have to just sit in one place.
Sit in one place, light a diya, sit calmly, clean clothes, take a bath if possible. Okay. Light a diya, one agarbatti, one incense or something that is fragrant. Chant those names. Say you do it for Ganpati, you do it say 5 times or 7 times and continue this for a few months. Don't break the pattern.
Every day.
Every day. It's going to create an energy, tremendous energy around you.
Okay. this is what you can do without having a guru in your
Yes,
life.
definitely. But Tantra by itself, for the sake of completion, Tantra, this is the mantra is only the first stage. So, as it becomes more advanced, more deeper, then you will need what is known as Diksha, initiation from a guru. And then Tantra bifurcates into multiple variations of Tantra. And this is where, since you did mention that in the West it is looked at as one thing and in India people have a negative connotation, why that comes in, and it's important to understand the context of it. So Tantra has, broadly speaking, two bifurcations. One is the Vamachar and the Dakshinachar. Dakshina means right, okay? The right hand path and the left hand path. Vamachara and Dakshinachara. In Dakshinachara, you worship the deity with all the methods, the Tantra, Mantra, Yantra, every. Tantra is the ritualistic practice of worship, Mantra is the mantras of the deity, okay?
The chants.
Chants. It could be multiple mantras. The Guru will give you the mantra of the deity, okay? Tantra, mantra, and yantra of the deities is a diagrammatic representation of the deity. Okay? And of course, the method in which you worship, which your guru will tell you, whoever is doing the upasana. But you use only sattvic ingredients in the upasana, which means that you use vegetarian ingredients and all that we consider as sattvic. Okay? Mostly vegetarian, but also coconut water, fruit juices, this, that, etc. as offerings to the deity. Vamachara, the left hand path, is considered, as per the tantras, another path of upasana. And in the chronology of practice, so when we go to the oldest tantras like the Kularnava and all that, they mention that it is not a dichotomy between the right hand and the left hand path, but these are stages of progression. So a perfection in tantra sadhana, suppose there is one two individual who has attained absolute perfection, and that may require lifetimes of practice. It is not about one lifetime. None of these are one lifetime practices, by the way. So Shiva says in the Kularnava that after you have mastered Dakshinachara, then you will have to enter into Vamachara, where you will offer five tattvas to the deity. Five tattvas, the first thing that comes is sanctified alcohol. Okay, sanctified means with the help of mantras it is purified. Okay, it is transformed. Only then it can be offered. It's called karan. Okay, and then there's meat offering, there's fish offering, there's mudra, which is specific kind of grains, and then there's maithuna or sex, but that is also sanctified through mantras. It's not at all a normal physical interaction between a man and a woman. It's a different thing. But these idea, the philosophy behind it is that those things which you think are obstructions in the path, that which will degrade you, it is those that can also lift you and take you to the realm of the deity. One who has passed through both of these two paths and perfected them, Dakshinachara and the Vamachara, then becomes, has the next stage comes the Siddhantachara, which means that he has the right understanding of the world. Siddhanta means conclusion. His conclusion of the world, his conclusion of the deity, his conclusion of the tattvas, everything is perfected. And then the last stage comes is Kaulachara. Kaula means basically somebody who has, it's almost like he is one with the deity. There's no difference. In fact, Tantras also have another thing which they classify human beings in three categories. One is the Pashu. Pashu is an animal. Everybody is an animal at birth. Okay. By normal discourse, everybody is an animal. Once they take Diksha and start Tantra sadhana, they become a Veera. Veera means one who is brave. Why is a Veera? Because he is fighting against his own natural tendencies, transforming them so that he becomes divine. And then the third stage is he becomes Divya or divine. So he says that one who is a Pashu, without initiation, they do the basic practices. It's only via initiation, Diksha. When the Diksha ceremony is performed, then he becomes a Veera. This Veera stage is where all the tantras and the texts come in. This is where you learn what to do, how not to do, how long you have to do. And Divya, the divine, is very rare. Once an individual reaches the stage of the divine, he or she need not follow rules. But that is only one in lakhs and lakhs may reach that stage. So we assume once Diksha is there that you are in the stage of the Veera, and then as per the Shastras, as per the command of the Guru, you do your practices according to your system. It is from this, the use of these five tattvas, that Tantra also gets misunderstanding among people comes in. Those who are conditioned to believe, for example, large portion of Hindus are conditioned to believe that upasana of a deity has to be only vegetarian offerings, only a sattvic environment. That is not always the case. I mean, in Eastern India, in temple like the Ma Tara's famous Tarapit temple, Every day there's a fish that is offered to Matara. There's meat that is offered. Bali that happens. Kamakhya temple it happens. Kali temples in across Bengal we offer these things to Ma. Where do we offer these things? So these are the method of offering that we can offer. These all comes from the Shastras. You, as I said right at the beginning, I was mentioning in this conversation that the Shastras are the final parameters. They tell you what to do, what not to do. So you follow things according to the Shastras and according to the Shastra of the deity. So when you are worshipping Tantrokta Upasana, which is the tantric method of worship of Tara, for example, Ugra Tara is being done, and you are offering meat, fish, etc. It is as per the texts. The texts have recommended this. There's no question about it. There's no question of why and what not and no. You can say that, okay, I don't want to do that. Fine. You take another method of worship. You worship some other deity maybe. You worship Krishna. Krishna, for worshipping of Krishna, even in the tantric method, you don't offer anything non-vegetarian. You have to offer sattvic offerings, okay? But if you're doing this, so these rules are set. It is not based on anybody's whims and fancies. Okay, and these rules are set not from today, from the most perfected scriptures. So anybody who questions this automatically, in my view, becomes what is called a disbeliever, an astika. So uh, somebody who does not have belief in the path will not benefit from the path. As I said, we are not a religion of where we propagate things. I'm not asking you that you have to do this, but if you have to do this, you have to do it this way. That has to be clear. Yes, there is Dakshinachara Tantra, as I mentioned. So there are a lot of people, say in Navratra time, who go vegetarian, which is all okay. These are also, there's that option is very clearly there in the text. But what you cannot do is that you cannot question that why am I offering fish to Tara every day in the Tarapit temple, because that is perfectly aligned with the Tantra Shastras. Your lack of knowledge cannot be the parameter for deciding how to worship the deity.
Perhaps if you yourself are passionate about being vegetarian, then choose not to go about
Correct.
Tara Upasana.
Or choose the method by which you can do a sattvic upasana. So both methods are there. My point is that you should not question why it is being done, because it is as per the shastras. Just like when you offer something sattvic to the deity like in Navratras, when Durga Upasana is done in many homes and people go completely sattvic, especially in North India, which is fine. But what you cannot do is you cannot question why during Durga Puja Bali is happening, because that is from the Shastras. In fact, 7th century, 8th century commentator, one of the greatest commentators from Eastern India, Raghunandan Bhatta, he mentions that Durga Upasana requires Bali. And what day it has to be given, what kind of Bali, all details are there. What mantras, in fact, there is a mantra that is chanted in the ear of the animal before the Bali is to be given. This is a mantra that is chanted on the Kharga of the Devi. The invocation of Devi is to be done. So she is known as Bali Priya. Bali Priya means, very simply, what it has taken for centuries in the areas where Vamachara is practiced is that she likes Bali. Given that 60% of Hindus are anyway non-vegetarians, which is a very neutral, analysis report that came out. So to say that there should not be Bali is peak hypocrisy. I mean, it is actually offering and sanctifying the food that you are doing, that you are consuming. Earlier times in Bengal side, we used to have, for example, shops when which sold non-vegetarian food. So when meat was sold, it was mostly mutton and goat meat, not chicken. Chicken is normally not offered. Mutton. These are all specified in text. So they used to have an installation or a vigraha or photo of Ma Kali, and the first uh, animal used to be a bali to the Devi. So that it sanctifies into a prasad, like that.
Okay. What are we working towards here? What's the end goal of all this? What's the end goal of Sanatan Dharma?
To attain, that's what, divinize yourself, change yourself as a human. That is the one problem of the world across centuries. All philosophies you read, end of the day, the one question that people have struggled with is that, why am I suffering? If you are born, you will suffer. Lord Rama also had periods of suffering, at least in the text that is mentioned. So you and me, we are ordinary people, we will suffer. So how do you end suffering? You end suffering by transcending yourself from the human condition to a divine condition, by becoming a reflection of the deity. Now suppose the deity you are worshipping is Mashantara, cremation ground Tara. Then you worship the method through which it has to be worshipped, her worship occurs, which she likes. so that eventually you end up into a state where you reflect that energy of the deity, you transcend your humanness, you go beyond suffering, you go beyond into that state. That is the final goal. By pursuing a deity, you are already on the path of evolution, because the deity's
Hmm.
consciousness is much higher. That is why we are worshipping. The whole world functions in this principle that he or she or whatever has lesser energy gets automatically drawn, or the word we use, which I think is more accurate, Shakti. Those that individual process anything that has lesser Shakti gets organically drawn towards that which has a higher Shakti. Today, a film star goes, everybody goes crazy. The film stars come. Why? Because for good or bad, he or she has a Shakti. Fame is a Shakti.
Hmm.
Power, money is a Shakti. Prime Minister has a Shakti. Military power is one kind of Shakti. Writing is a Shakti. Speaking is a Shakti. These are all manifestations of power. Okay, Tantra says that power is divine. Divinizing power is the key goal, philosophical goal of Tantra, because there are asuric powers also. We don't want to go there. We want powers that originate from the deities. Okay, and then the use of that power is not based on your ego, it's on the command of the deity. So basically, the idea is that you you not only survive, you don't just survive, you triumph over life. And that can only be done by deity. You cannot do that. Human beings are flawed. Human birth is meant for suffering. Some of the other suffering will come. Doesn't matter how good your horoscope one may have. Suffering is going to come. The only way you go beyond suffering is you transform yourself into the reflection of the deity. That is the end goal of Upasana.
So there's some point in your own spiritual journey where you will have the ticket to escape the cycle of birth and death.
Yes, that is what we call moksha traditionally.
Okay. And every Tantra Upasak who sticks to the process over lifetimes will eventually reach that goal.
Yeah, but more than that, what I personally feel, the aim is not even escaping from life and birth. You become a reflection of the deity. If you escape from life and death, that's to give a rough analogy. Suppose there's a group of people playing video games. So you just say that, okay, I'm done. I'm bored out of it. Fine. But what if there's somebody who says, no, no, I'm not done, but I will become such a terrific player that I'll never lose? Which
Hmm.
is more fun?
Hmm.
You tell me.
Understood.
Hmm.
So there could be Upasaks
Yes.
who cross that point of moksha and say, no, no, actually, I'll just stay back.
Huh? Whether they cross or not, I don't know. But there are great, terrific, powerful souls who do not transcend completely. They stay back and they guide, and they may not be in the forefront. And they are so powerful that they are almost a reflection of the deity they have worshipped. There is a particular section in some of the Kashmiri Shaiva texts which I had read long back, if I remember it correctly. So they say categorization of Shaktipat. Shaktipat is transformation that the Guru makes on an individual by the infusion of Shakti power, divine power. Some souls, it says, get instantly liberated, but liberation does not necessarily mean that completely out of the cycle or something like that, but they become such powerful reflections of Shiva, because Shiva is the ultimate goal in the Shaiva, Kashmiri Shaiva path. They become such powerful reflections of Shiva or Bhairava, Parama Bhairava, who is the Para Bhairava, great Bhairava, and they in turn are absolutely free. So remember this, freedom is one of the goals of Upasana. Freedom means you, me, anybody else, we are not free. There is always some or the other binding that is there in your mind. Whether, okay, you have to finish your work, you have to go home, you have to eat your food at this moment, 10 people may be dependent on you, this and that. Those are not freedoms. Okay. To be free is something that only a deity understands. Humans don't understand. We have never been free. From birth to death, nobody is ever free. Okay? But there is an absolute freedom, and in that state of freedom, they can guide other souls also. Okay? They may not even have a physical form. So there are siddhas like this in the Himalayas or other places, etc. They have not left the system. They're not the people who have just switched off the computer and said, I'm not playing the game. They are in the game, but in a different manner, and they have tremendous amount of freedom. They have transcended their human ego completely. They have divinized themselves, and they do not make mistakes because they are guided by forces even higher than them.
Hmm.
For example, just to, it's a theoretical thing, say the famous being who is widely known as Mahavatar Babaji. Okay? Somebody like that exists. but he is something. It's like like the soul, the Atman. He can take up a body at will. So what does it look like? He can look like anything he wants. What kind of freedom is there? So he, wherever he may be, his consciousness, from there he can guide so many people. He doesn't need to manifest himself.
What's the difference between Mahavatar Babaji and the divinity that the world references as God?
What the word God means in the Western culture is different from what we mean in Hinduism. Hinduism, we have a corresponding idea. It's called the Ishvara. Ishvara is a tattva, by the way. Ishvara is one deity uh, who has tremendous opulence and power. But that doesn't end here. Remember, I told you right at the beginning that there is also the concept of the Brahman, which is even higher. So there is never going to be one mistake we should not do is try to tailor Hinduism according to the ideas of Abrahamic religions, because these two are separate paths. Have a healthy respect for each other, but don't fall into the trap that, okay, there is a God, so we need to have a God. No, we have a Brahman, which is higher than God. Okay. So, this is, if you look at the image, tantric image of Lalita Mahatripur Sundari or Dakshina Kali, you will see that she sits on a throne where there are five Ishwaras. Imagine Ishwar is a tattva. Tattva means a certain set of qualities. It is like you pass class 12 and you get a certificate. So whoever gets that certificate is an Ishvara, suppose. Okay, so there are five Ishwaras, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, and there is another Ishvara. They are holding the throne. On the top of the throne, there is Sadashiva. That is another tattva. Okay, Sadashiva is, we already worship Sadashiva as a great, fantastic, all powerful being. So these concepts are so vast that you cannot even imagine, by the way. By the time this image, it has been drawn, because it's passing on certain very deep information into the Upasaka's subconscious, into his psyche. The rational mind cannot fathom what is Sadashiva. It cannot even fathom Ishvara. Ishvara is so vast. Beyond Sadashiva, then there is Mahakal, if you are looking at Kali, okay, Dakshina Kali. And beyond Mahakal, there is Dakshina Kali. You cannot imagine what is Sadashiva, you cannot imagine what is Ishvara. How will you imagine what is Kali? It is so vast. The idea this image was created is that through holy art, divine images and arts which also have a own rational logic in it, rationality that is based not the standard the rationality of the five senses, but rationality of a spiritual nature which the rishis understand. They are able to transmit an energy into the upasaka's subconscious mind, by which he slowly transforms as he worships that deity. So on day one, you may not be able to, you can understand this in theory, but you don't fully understand. For example, Kamakhya, the image of Ma Kamakhya, if you see, very standard image. These days, though, she's there on the internet everywhere. I see every second person speaking on Kamakhya, which is wonderful. But the image shows that there's a lion. On top of the lion, there is a white, like a dead body. From the navel of the dead body, there is a lotus flower. On top of the lotus flower, there's a deity with 6 faces and 12 arms and weapons. Okay, that deity is Kamakhya. Now, this image, they say that the lion is Vishnu. Okay, on top of that, there's Shiva. Shiva lying down like a preta, Shwet preta, white preta. On that, there's a lotus, that is Brahma, and then on that is sitting the great goddess Kamakhya. Why this kind of an image? What does it mean really? Why? So this much information you will get over the internet and texts 100 times, but there is a deeper essence of this image that will only come into the consciousness of the upasaka after he has been worshipping this deity for a very long time. And it is not subject to the fact that just because you know the mantra of Kamakhya, you will understand what this image means. A simple interpretation is that the lion is dharma. Okay, so basically, if you are only a person who is a fearless worshipper, fearless upholder of dharma, because lion's first characteristic is that it is not scared. That's why the lion, not a deer, not any other animal. Lion is like the king. Lion is a fighter. Lion is something that's more aggressive. So you aggressively follow what is dharma, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of adversaries. When that stage has been perfected in the upasaka's life, then he comes to the stage of a preta. Preta means now he loses interest in the material world completely. That is Shiva. It's like a cremation ground. You're nothing in the world around you attracts you anymore. You have already done your duty for dharma. And mind you, this duty has to be something very aggressive because it's a lion. It's not a goat or a deer or a cow even. It's a lion. That quality, that tattva is there. Then he becomes somebody who's so detached like Shiva. When he or she has reached that stage, after that there is a new creation that comes in. Lotus is signifying something, a divine creation, and on top of that the deity manifests as Kamakya. So these qualities, until one passes through these stages, you can keep chanting the mantras and you can worship, but you will not realize the deity easily.
Okay. There is this one last burning question I have in my head. The topic I want to speak about is Kundalini
Okay.
and how it's linked to enlightenment, moksha, spiritual advancement, tantric practice in general. Because when you live in India, you get access to multiple schools of spiritual evolution. So you can go down a Kriya Yoga path. They talk about Kundalini and the power of the spine in that path as well. Kundalini is spoken about in Kundalini Yoga, the Kundalini is spoken about in Tantra as well.
Yes.
What we believe as Hindus is that there exists a form of energy in your lowest chakra. It takes the form of a serpent. And through the course of your own spiritual journey, that energy of that serpent is able to go up, travel up your spine, combines with your third eye chakra at your forehead. And that is when great spiritual change and or great damage, if you do this whole practice in an unguided manner, can take place in your life. And do you think the Kundalini is a topic worth mentioning in detail in this episode?
Yes, all topics are worth mentioning. Why not Kundalini? More or less, what you said is correct, but more or less, that's the theory. There's a gap between theory and reality. So it is not that only when the Kundalini reaches here at the Shastra chakra that a person is able to spiritually advance. The moment the Kundalini starts moving, there is going to be an advancement. Okay, a change in reality, in the perception of reality. That is what the key thing about Kundalini is. It changes your perception of reality. Okay, and as it goes deeper, as the awakening of the Kundalini happens step by step properly, and it's very rare for an individual to have the Kundalini perfectly awakened through all the chakras. It's very rare. Little bit of movement, yes, possible, etc. It automatically changes your perception, your clarity, your vision. It's like an additional power, Shakti, that is infused, like an injection that has been given to you by the divine. Now, Shakti is like a sword, double edged sword. It can cut something else, or if you don't know how to use it, it can cut you. Okay. So that's why guidance is important. Kundalini was never a thing that was to be focused on without a guru. It is always a guru or a guide or a mentor who is needed who can handle this. Or there's a better way to handle Kundalini, by the way, which is worship of deities. So when you worship a deity, your Kundalini is going to first manifest as a deity. Yes, your Kundalini is a is a tremendous amount of raw power that will be generated from within your subconscious mind. Okay, tremendous amount, and that takes the shape of a deity. And this is a very deep concept. Since we are anyway coming into this topic, so I'll elaborate on this. The deities are great archetypes that are there. There's a Shiva, there's a Kali, there's a Durga, there's a Kamakhya, right? Somewhere in some plane. You are not going to reach them so easily. But as you keep doing your practices, the Kundalini will awaken one day on its own. If your practices are correctly aligned, as the Kundalini awakens, it will take on a shape and formation. Kundalini's nature, Shakti's nature is that it hangs on to something. Okay. It is like a fluid energy. Imagine water. Water, you can put it in a cup, it takes the shape of the cup. You can put it in a saucer, it takes the shape of the saucer. Kundalini does exactly that. Once it comes out, it's a tremendous force. It requires an adhar, a container, to take a shape. There, if you have been worshipping a specific deity, and it could be even Ganpati, for example, it will take the shape and formation of Ganpati, and it will create an astral formation of the deity. But your own personal deity, who will interact with you, will have all the abilities that you have imagined. You will start developing certain kind of, for lack of words, we call siddhis, things like that, special, very fine, very advanced amount of sensory as well as psychological abilities, even to the extent of things which we call as mind reading. Not mind reading, it's more like clairvoyance, clairaudience, various things. It depends on the individual. And eventually, that formation in the astral plane of the deity will one day, if a practice is correct, when the Kundalini reaches here or it comes here at a certain point, it will take you to the actual deity and merge into it eventually.
So, sorry, sir. You're saying that there's a point where Kundalini Jagran or awakening of your Kundalini takes place
Yes.
over the course of your spiritual practice.
Yes.
And post that point, if your body and brain are able to survive the awakening of a Kundalini, which is also a key factor. They say that you can go crazy.
Yeah, so the crazy aspects happen about 10, 15, 20%. Many of the people survive it well. But that by itself, just awakening of the Kundalini is not spiritual development. Okay. So that is like you're putting in jet fuel into your car. Spiritual development is reaching the destination.
So, say if you've used tantric practices to advance spiritually, there will be a day where your Kundalini awakens.
Yes.
That leads to the formation of a deity, which is kind of your personal deity.
Correct. But its look, shape, form will be exactly like the deity that you're worshipping. So if you're worshipping Shiva, or if you're worshipping Kamakhya, for example, if a person has a Kundalini awakening, that Kundalini will take the shape and form of Kamakhya or of Shiva. It is not the original Shiva, but it is like original Shiva is like an archetype, vast. It's not just for Hindus or etc. It's for something that's eternal. Okay, it will have an exact replica, reflection, and a certain degree of the same amount of power of the deity also. But it will interact only with you as the Upasaka and start guiding you higher.
You'll be able to see it?
You might, or you might hear it. There are people who do mantra sadhana, for example. Very recently, somebody I know is doing mantra japa and then started hearing sounds at a particular time of a pile. Women wear piles, right? So there's a Devi Upasana he was doing and he hears a certain sound. That's a very typical indication of a certain kind of Kundalini's activation.
Is there any way to tell that someone is close to their own point of activation of Kundalini?
One has to be observed carefully. There's no one thumb rule.
Okay.
But the idea is that one should not look forward to just a Kundalini awakening, because that, again, just Kundalini is like as I said, like a jet fuel. It makes processes run very fast. But if you don't know where you are going, you can crash.
Got it.
Just to add a bit to the last section that I was describing, the iconography of Kamakhya, and there is that lotus that comes in at the end. That lotus is itself an indication of the Kundalini awakening. Once these two stages have been crossed by the Upasaka, then the Kundalini awakens. And from there, Kamakhya descends into the Upasaka's mind and body.
Okay. Do you wish to talk about the spine at all?
Yes. So spine, the human spine has 6 psychological chakras. Psychological, because if you do an anatomic dissection, you won't find any of this. So there are believed to be 72,000 nadis, energy, the channels to which energy flows into the body. There are places where these come together, specifically crisscross each other, and those are specific energy points in the body. So like this, there are 6 of them. Okay, from the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, like this, there are 6 of them. In some texts they mention even 9 and 12 also, in some older texts. So mind you, these are psychological points. They don't have a physical existence, but psychology is far more powerful than the physical world, by the way. Always remember this: that which is more subtle is way more powerful than the physical. The subtle can control the physical. We follow laws, but laws don't have a physical existence. They are a shared, agreed upon idea. And the idea is so powerful that it is making you behave in a certain way. So it's controlling the physical. So the psychological actually controls the physical. So this way, there are 6 chakras. As Kundalini goes, these chakras are mostly closed in an individual or functioning partially. As it goes up, it opens up each of these chakras. Various powers start manifesting. Clarity emerges in that. A tremendous amount of exceptional clarity. It's like the glasses have been, it's like you were wearing hazy glasses and you clean it and suddenly everything looks brighter and more sharper, like this. So like this, it keeps going. And there are 3 knots in the scheme of the spine. Knots means places where there are blockages, sort of. Just like a knot. So these knots have to be pierced by the Kundalini Shakti. One is the Brahma Granthi, we call it, which is at the base. Brahma Granthi, once it's pierced by the Shakti of Kundalini, that person attains steadiness and discipline in his sadhana. He will not waver anymore. Okay, he can sit for long hours. Not only that, he has the discipline to carry on. His mind doesn't run around ki, oh, I'm feeling bored today, I will not do the practice. No, once that stage is crossed, it will manifest in his life as somebody who's very steady. Then there's the Vishnu Granthi, which is in the heart, deep inside the heart, behind the Anahata Chakra. Vishnu Granthi, once it is opened, energy pierces, then you start having some sort of communication with the deity. Okay. Below the Vishnu Granthi, deity will not communicate. There are other things that can communicate, by the way. And finally, there is the Rudra Granthi, that is the forehead. Once that is pierced, then you enter into the Shahasrar, which is a 1,000-petaled lotus. Basically, then this is like the cremation ground. Okay. Then you have transcended life. And there it is Shiva and Parvati, or the cosmic formation of the deities sitting.
What is Samadhi?
Samadhi is single-pointed absorption into a deity or a thought or a spiritual idea or a mantra. Single-pointed. There's no wavering. It can only come when the Kundalini is awake. These are all linked things. This is not separate channels. Eventually one understands. Not everybody will understand, because you must have the psychological development in your mind to be able to tie these things together, which is why the role of the guru, only few individuals can follow this. Rest need not understand, but you can experience them.
As you keep progressing down this tantric path, are you able to see layers of reality that you weren't able to see earlier?
Any spiritual path. Once you start developing your vision, your auditory senses, this and that, there is a subtle aspect to this. There's a physical aspect of this. Like physically you're talking to somebody, seeing. There's a subtle aspect to this. That subtle aspect will get activated. For example, in some of the descriptions of Ma Tara, she's doing Attahasa. Attahasa is a loud laughter. At a very advanced stage of Upasana of Tara, the sadhaka will hear that Attahasa, literally hear that laughter of the deity. It's a fierce laughter, but before that you have to be steady enough to take that, so that it doesn't cause, somebody who's not fit for it will get a nervous breakdown. Okay. And one has to remember that when these things manifest to the Upasaka, there will be corresponding reflections of it around the Upasaka also.
As in?
It's very important. Otherwise, how will you differentiate who is actually mad and who is an Upasaka? A mad man can say, I am hearing various things. Upasaka is also saying that I am hearing the Attahasa of Ugratara, or I am hearing the sound of a pile or something. Well, how do you differentiate between the two? Because what is inside is also outside. As your consciousness changes, there are going to be changes outside. By looking and observing those changes, the signs, you will know that actually, is it progress or is it something you are degrading? And that is where, since most upasakas start this path new, and obviously you don't know, it's a new field. For everybody it's a new field. That's where the guru becomes so important, because he or she knows the pitfalls, knows how to judge, knows which is the point to stress, which is the point to ignore. What is it that there will be on the path, people will have hundreds of experiences. It's natural. Some people have a more, there is another thing, and again, Sri Aurobindo beautifully mentions this. All upasakas can be, categorized into two parts. One is the Ishvara and the Ishwari, which is the Purusha, one who has a little bit more psychologically, the masculine tendencies psychologically, and one who has the more feminine tendencies. This concept also comes in Vajrayana Buddhism too, by the way. So one who has the more feminine tendencies, and by tendency I mean it could be male or female, it's got nothing to do with the physical gender, okay, will start getting psychic visions, abilities, this, that, very fast. The one with the more masculine tendencies may not get any vision, may not get any psychic abilities, nothing, but will get to samadhi faster. Will have a single pointed concentration, will be able to absorb themselves into the practice, forgetting the world around easily. Okay. Eventually these two will blend together. It's not that one is separate from the other, but these understandings are important. Otherwise, for a person who has a tendency to see visions, for example, very quickly they start a practice of a deity, they're seeing dreams and visions and this and that. Until that is streamlined, until that is organized in a way where it makes sense, that person will go completely haywire. Because experiences are nothing until they cause a realization, and a realization is useful to the extent that it causes a transformation. That is the final goal. You cannot forget the final goal. That is why philosophy becomes so important in everything. Philosophy is the Google map
Mm.
through which you will reach somewhere. If you don't have that map, you are heading towards Himalaya, you will end up in Kanyakumari.
Hmm. Okay. Maybe one last question on
Yes.
today's episode. Um, what's the role of the geographical landmass that we know as India? And I'm asking you this because I've been studying a lot about deities that are not prayed to anymore, deities that existed in different cultures, like Zeus in Greek culture, um, Gilgamesh in Mesopotamian. There are African deities. There are lots of South American deities. There are Egyptian deities like Ra, Anubis,
Mm.
etc. I feel all of these had their own version of ritualistic prayer. You
Mm.
could pray to them. And the world has gone through a very long phase of undocumented history, in my opinion,
Okay.
because of constant cataclysms, meteors hitting the earth, just the nature of time eroding all these places. This is
Mm.
what the work of Graham Hancock is related to.
Okay.
There is a show on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse.
Okay.
If you're not willing to listen to all of Graham Hancock's episodes with Joe Rogan, go watch Ancient Apocalypse.
Mm.
Um, but my point is that deities have existed all over the globe and in many different geographical regions.
Mm.
Deity worship has stopped. I believe it's only practiced in our land, in some pockets of Asia like Mongolia,
China.
China, Japan, um, and I'm pretty sure it's practiced by tribal populations all over the world.
Right.
What do you think of this international deity worship? What do you think of our geographical land that we know as India? Because I feel on some level, every single global listener of this podcast has an ancestor who followed deity worship, which is why anyone who stuck around in this conversation until this point feels a sense of curiosity related to deity worship. There must be some role that India is playing. What's your opinion?
So there are two questions, if I gathered it correctly. One is the importance of the landmass we call India, and about deity worship. So deity worship has always been there. Of course, there are changes that have happened. There are political changes that have happened, religious changes that have happened. While some deities have gone back into the fold. So the question is, if your question is that what happens to those deities, they just retreat back into whichever fold, and depending on the nature of the deity, there's nothing more to it. So deity is a true deity, the one we call deities, and I'm talking from the Hindu perspective. I'm not at all a globalist in terms of let's worship all deities. I will worship what I know. Others I respectfully bow from a distance. A deity that we understand in Dharma, in Hinduism, is eternal. Eternal means tomorrow, if all human beings were to vanish from earth, Shiva is still going to exist. It will not make the slightest difference to him. It's not going to make the slightest difference to Durga. It's not going to make the slightest difference to what we call Vasudeva Krishna. Okay. Somebody who is that ancient, that vast, for a culture stopping his or her worship for a period of 1000 years is a blink of an eye. They can re-enter anytime. So my point is that they have the power to change the consciousness of masses. That is what a deity is. Truly a great god, not the smaller things. Because between a great god, deity, and a human being, there are many other beings also, by the way. And our dharma recognizes all those, that there are existence of other things also. I'm not talking about those, I'm talking about the greatest ones. So deity upasana, I believe, is anyway organically again going to come up. It's just a matter of time. It's there. It's not that it has vanished. It has like taken a step back in certain places. India, on the other hand, it is the land of the rishis and the blessings of the rishis, that deity upasana not only exists in spite of various uh, colonization attempts that we have had, and religious colonization attempts actually. In spite of that, the Hindu dharma and the Sanatana dharma of multiplicity of deity upasana thrives well, and it is only increasing, and it is never ever going to go out from here, because we have the blessings of the greatest of spiritual beings. There's something about the Indian landmass that makes spirituality long sustaining. Maximum stages of spirituality manifest most easily. There has never been a time in the history of Dharma, even when India was under the occupation of foreign powers, when great saintly figures, saints who are worshippers of deities. So there was Ramakrishna, who was born during the British occupation of India, and he sets up the Kali temple, and his disciple is Swami Vivekananda, who inspires generations of freedom fighters. India has always progressed because of the saints who come, and the saints are connected to the deity upasanas. One individual who follows deity upasana and reaches a higher state, acquires great Shakti of the deity, automatically everybody else will follow. I just mentioned some time ago that the first principle of world, of the universe, is that somebody with lower Shakti, things with lower Shakti will organically gravitate towards things with higher Shakti. A man with exceptional Shakti will organically pull people towards that deity. And it has always happened in India, it has always happened in India. It is never ever going to change. There is something very holy about this landmass, Indian landmass.
Okay. That's it for today's podcast.
Thank you.
This was a 101 and a recap on Tantra and Sanatan Dharma. I hope this helped the global audience, especially, and the audiences that have recently discovered this channel. Rajarshi Nandy, sir, thank you for returning to the show, and thank you for blessing our space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
That was the episode for today. If this is your first Rajarshi Nandy experience, I highly recommend you go and check out all our other conversations that we've created over the years. Lots more to come with this gentleman. Remember, the description contains links that will redirect you towards the causes that Rajarshi Nandy is working on. Please go check them out as well. India's currently in a phase of history where we're trying to rebuild what was lost over the last 1500 years, be it temples, be it cultural values, be it ancient knowledge. We're in a rebuilding phase. That's what this podcast is trying to contribute to. Please tell us what you thought of this conversation. And until next time, guys, from Rajarshi Nandy and Ranveer Allahbadia, we'll see you very soon.